I'm just having my glass of water to get me ready.
Ciao bambini.
Good morning and welcome to our whole school assembly.
Hola!
Let's get some learning on.
Welcome to another day of home learning.
Ticka-ticka, what time is it?
So we're going to work out the volume of this spring roll.
And they're all over the floor.
I consist of 95% water.
We learn grammar through the coolest tool, music.
Super goed.
God arbeidet i dag, elever.
I just need to keep up. I'm so proud of you. It's well done.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, which is looking at managing Chrome devices in your school. My name's Andy Caffrey. I'm a Google certified trainer and certified innovator. I work with the team at Canopy and I've been using Google in schools for about the last 12 years now. So I was a teacher originally, a geography teacher, moved to be head of department and assistant head teacher, working in a school with over 1,600 Chromebooks. And then around 2-3 years ago, left to work with the team at Canopy. So I've had quite a bit of experience of using and managing lots of Chromebooks in your school, and that's what we're going to focus in on today's webinar. As we go through today, it'd be great to find out whether maybe you're new to Chromebooks, maybe you've never used one before, but over in the chat on the right-hand side in YouTube, it would be great to find out whether you've got a favorite Chromebook. Maybe it's the only Chromebook you've ever had. Maybe you're new to them. But feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, and put your favorite Chromebook in the comments so we can see what it is you've got or what it is you're using. Chromebook's been around for just over 10 years now. They've just recently celebrated their 10th birthday. So they've been around a while and they've come a long way since they were first launched into schools. I'll just find a little picture of that. Where's that gone? Here we go. Back in 2008, Chromebooks first appeared in schools when the Chrome OS browser was launched. And then over the years, the services and the range of tools available on them has continued to increase. And so with that, the customization of the Chromebooks has continued to increase as well. So we now have a lot more that we can do. And even if we just look around a year ago now, there were 200 customizable policies, and that's jumped from that point to 500 ones available around about now. So just the choice and the setup choices for us using Chromebooks has grown hugely over that time as more and more people grow to using Chromebooks. We've had some Chromebook in. Someone, music theory guy, loves using the Lenovo the Lenovo 500E is his Chromebook of choice. And feel free to let us know in the chat if you've got any other Chromebooks that you particularly like. So let's get into today's session. Just jump back through my slides now. Oops, go back this way. What we're going to do today, we're going to break this down to four parts. In the first part, we're going to talk about enrolling Chromebooks. How do we enroll Chromebooks? What's the point? What does that do? Then we're going to look at the device settings and how we can change the device settings. And then the user settings and how we can control those. And then finally, we'll talk about apps and extensions and increasing the functionality of our Chromebook by adding apps and extensions. So those are the four areas we're going to focus on in today's webinar. As we go through today, if you've got any questions, feel free to, one of two things, to jump over to our Q&A doc, and it's available online at bit.ly/Chrome QA. And when you get there, you'll notice there's lots of questions already because we've run this session before. So we've left all the questions from previous sessions in there in case the question you're asking has already been answered. So you can put questions over there and I will jump every so often and have a look at the questions in the doc. But if I don't get the chance to answer all the questions today, then after today's training session, I will jump back into that document and answer anything or put any links into any more answers. So feel free to keep that document around as a useful resource if you're someone who's in charge of managing Chrome devices in your school. So the Q&A doc is up and running. It's over there. I'll refer to it as we go as well through today's session. We're going to be using heavily the admin console today. To be able to manage your devices, you need access to the admin console. In a minute, I'll be moving over and sharing my screen to the admin console to show you where the settings are. There's a few things I always say at the start of these webinars where we're going to talk about the admin console. And the first one is just to be careful what we're doing. If you're going in now and you're making changes to the Chrome devices, and at the same time, you've got students sitting out in classrooms using all these Chrome devices right now as we're in the middle of the school day, then that's going to make changes to what they're doing. So let's think carefully before we make changes to any device that's being used live in the classroom. And also, I think it's also important to communicate with other people. And the sort of best organisations, the decisions about what to do with Chromebooks, about which way to set policies, about what to allow, what not to allow, is often a consultation between teachers, technical people within the school, IT support staff. And that communication and consultation is important to get the right settings for the pupils and the teachers that you're working with. And I do find that those choices vary from school to school. And we'll dig into that as we go through, but make sure you're communicating with other people in your organisation if you are making changes. Okay, so that's our health and safety piece for the admin console out the way. Now let's dig in and let's get started and let's talk about enrolling devices. So before we get into that, I want to say that there are particularly important for us to understand there's effectively two different types of Chromebooks we might come across. If you just go down the road to a shop, let's say you go into PC World and buy yourself a Chromebook, what you'll have here is what we would describe as an open device. It's just a device that anybody could pick up, sign into with any sort of account, a Gmail account, a Google Workspace account from your school, and therefore they could sign in and use that device. And even if they don't have an account, they could press the guest mode button and they could go into guest mode and use that device. That device is wide open to the internet and it's not controlled at the point that it powers up. Now, when they sign into their user account at that point, let's imagine someone takes one of these wide open devices from PC World and signs into a school account, then the user restrictions will still apply when they sign into the account. But of course, we have no way of controlling what account they're signing into on those sort of devices. So that's our wide open devices. More commonly in schools, what we see is managed devices. And those are devices that have the Chrome Education upgrade on them. And therefore, they are managed and controlled from the point the device powers up. So as soon as somebody hits the power key and they come onto it, that device is being controlled by the school. And that means we can put restrictions in place as to who's signing into it, who's using that device before they even get to the sign-in page. And then obviously when they sign in, those user restrictions are going to kick in as well. So just need to bear in mind there's these two types of devices. If you're dealing with open devices that don't have the Chrome Education upgrade, you can only set restrictions at the user level. If you're dealing with fully managed devices that have got the Chrome Education upgrade on them, then you can control them from the moment they power up. And it's important just to give that distinction. As most people watching this are probably working in a school, probably bought their devices from a Chromebook reseller, you're probably talking about having managed devices. So when we've got a managed device and we want to enroll it and bring it onto the school and put the license on and lock it to our school, we have to enterprise enroll that device. And there's a few different ways of doing that now. Historically, the way was to power up the device, press Control Alt and E, which is the keyboard shortcut for enterprise enrollment, and sign in with any account from inside the domain, just to enroll that device and to bind that device to your admin console. And that then enables that device to appear when we go into the admin console and we go to the devices area and we look at the list of devices. So historically, you powered it up and did that. Now, some schools would go down a route of enrolling with a default admin account. And other schools would often get the student, if they're going on a one-to-one approach with devices, might get the student that's going to have that device to do that process, because then it will note that device against that student in the admin console. So again, your sort of choice. And this is the first time, one-off time we need to do this to enterprise enroll it. Moving forward, there is actually another way coming to enterprise enroll, and that is we're starting to see the rollout, and this is very, very new, so not out much yet, but we're starting to see this become more and more available, of what we call zero-touch enrollment for Chrome OS devices. And this is when you make a purchase of let's imagine you go to a Chromebook reseller and you buy a big quantity of Chromebooks. They'll be able to offer you zero-touch enrolment, which means then when those devices arrive at your school, they've effectively already enrolled on the domain. And I think moving forward, that could become a more popular route. So we might be able to avoid that step of pressing Control-Alt-E and signing on once to enterprise enroll. So zero-touch enrollment, rolling out to newer devices, coming out at the moment, starting to see that from some resellers. So that's the sort of the start of enrollment. Now, when we've enrolled them, they then appear inside the admin console. So let me just move over. I'm going to move across now to my admin console, and here I am inside the Google admin console. When we've enrolled a device, they appear in my devices area. So here I am on the home page. I go to devices, and this page gives me some choices. Obviously, what we're interested in today is Chrome devices. So I've come over to Chrome devices, and this shows me my Chrome devices on my domain. Now, just to be very clear, I'm using a training domain here. It's not a real school, no real live personal data in here, and ironically, only 2 Chromebooks. So here I am in the admin console. I can see my 2 Chromebooks here. I can see the serial number, and I can see in my one here the model number. You can choose what appears on this page, and actually the model number doesn't appear by default, but I find it useful to know what Chromebook that is. So over here on the right-hand side, there's a little settings cog, and in that area there, you can choose what appears on that devices page. So I often go down and put the status, the model number, which is this one here, and I drag it right at the top because I just personally find it useful to know that maybe it's an Asus, maybe it's an Acer, maybe it's a Lenovo 500E that is Music Theory Guy's favorite Chromebook, what that model is, because I worked in a school with lots of different Chromebooks and serial numbers are not the easiest thing to work with straight off. So you can pop the model number in, and obviously there's other things we can bring in here to give us some data on this page when we're looking at the Chromebooks that have been enrolled in our domain. If you don't see any Chromebooks when you get there, it's because you haven't done the enrollment stage of enrolling in the domain. Once I click on the Chromebook, it brings me some details about that device. And so I can see different things about when it was last used. There are some custom fields if I want to use them down here. Who the user was that registered the device, when the recent activity was, hasn't been used for nearly a year now, this device, and etc. how it's going on. So there's some background information about the device here. On the left-hand side, I've got some options. So move it. My devices in the admin console can live inside organizational units, just like my students can, and my teachers can, and everybody else who lives inside the admin console. It is good practice, therefore, to have some sense of organizing your Chromebooks into groups in some way. And you need to think about, well, what groups might you want for your school? And so here I can move them around, and as you can see, I can go into my school here, and I've got a section for devices in my there, and maybe I want to put it into the devices area. If you have trolleys of Chromebooks in your school, you might want to have trolley 1, trolley 2, trolley 3, trolley 4 here, so you can organize them by the trolleys. If you're a one-to-one device school and students have got them, you might want to have year 7 devices, year 8 devices, year 9 devices. And that enables us to make changes to the year groups without altering the other year groups. If we want to be a bit stricter on year 7 in a secondary school, but are not so strict on year 12 in terms of what they can do with their device, we can make changes by year group. So think about carefully your organization where you're going to put all your devices in your console. That's the move button. Below that, the reset button, that resets the device. Students are particularly bad at ever powering their device off. Lots of people I work with on Chromebooks, they just close the lid at the end of the day, and the next day they open the lid and carry on again. And therefore their devices don't update. If you did that for a long period of time, your devices never update. So you can reset it from the menu here, force it to reset. I can disable the device. So when I disable a device, what I'm doing there is I'm effectively locking the device. And so it makes it inoperable. And you can see it tells me here, it gives me, what do you want to do with this device? I have a choice if I'm going to lock my device. I can disable it with a lock screen to block any use of the device. It literally locks the device off. Or I can disable it with a factory reset to block the use of the device and remove all the data off it. So if I think it's stolen, maybe a student's told me about the device stolen, maybe I want to do that option. But whichever route I do, with it being disabled, there's a lock screen comes up. No one can use it, and this message comes up here. And you can choose, you can customize the message that comes up. So I've got contacting us for that. You put your phone number in there if you want to. And so if you ever lose a device or you're not sure where one is, locking it is a really great way of getting it back in this way. When you disable a device, that doesn't affect the management license on that device at all, because when we later on, we can come back in and undisable it when we find it. Deprovisioning it, that's going to remove the license and the device off our domain. So that's going to totally remove that device from our system. It will take this device and take it off our system. It will no longer be enterprise enrolled into our domain. So the only times really you're going to deprovision in terms of a use case for that might be maybe you've got students who've got their own Chromebooks, they've got to the end of year 11, they're leaving the school, they physically own the device, we don't want to control it anymore, so we deprovision it and move it off that way. So those are our sort of options when we are moving devices around there. A couple of questions that come up in the chat while I've been talking through that section. Tim asked, would zero touch enrollment autofill in these details? It basically does the control out and the enrollment piece for you. So what zero touch enrollment does, it means you don't have to, when you come onto the console here, you'd see all of the devices that you just purchased available in there. You wouldn't have to do the enrollment. As soon as you got out of the box, in fact, you could give it to a student in a box, it would already be enrolled. So that's what that does. And then Music Theory Guys, I don't know the name here, asks, can you bulk reset an OU of devices, or is it reset per device? You can move things in bulk if you want to. So I could go here onto this page, pick up a few devices. I've obviously only got 2 there, haven't I? And I could then start to move them around by picking them up in bulk that way. Or I can do it individually per device. So I'll hit them that way, select, and as you can see, once I've selected them, on the top menu here, I've got the move button. I can start moving them around. Having said that, working out which device is which using serial numbers is not the greatest, easiest thing to do. That's why I suggest you get your device, your OU structure in place early on. You don't want to be coming here and looking at thousands of devices trying to move them around. So that's some of the questions at the end of our enrollment section. Now, don't forget, you can also add questions to the doc at bit.ly/Chrome QA. I'll just jump over the doc now and see if anything's coming. Nothing new in there yet, so that's good. Okay, so we got the concept that we can enroll devices. Now let's move on to the next section and talk about our device settings. So by device settings, what we mean is, as I said earlier on, if we've got a control, we've got a managed device, then from the minute it's powered on, it's in our control. So we can make some settings from the moment the power on button comes on to control that device. So let's look at those settings. Back over to the admin console and just go to Chrome here. I'm going to go to device settings in the Chrome management menu and device settings. And this is showing me the settings for that device. Now, as we talked about earlier when we saw that graph, the number of the choice of device settings and user settings has vastly increased. And there's now over 500 different things that you could set up on your Chromebook. So there's an almost infinite number of ways you could configure a device. What I'm going to focus on today are the key ones that are relevant for us in education. So what is it that schools really need to think about? We need to go in and change and alter. So here I am on the device settings page. Just to point out on this page that that's where the disabled device return instructions are. Do you remember earlier on when we talked about disabling a device? That's where it gets the text from to put in by default. So that's where you could put that in. So thinking about the fact that this is controlling the device from when it's powered on, the first thing we really want to maybe play around with are the sign-in settings. So if I was in a school, I probably want to disable guest mode. Guest mode would allow someone to come onto that device without even. I'm going to just zoom my screen in a little bit here because my screen's a little bit small. A little bit bigger. There we go. So if I was working in a school, I'd probably turn guest mode off because guest mode means anyone could use my device. I won't know who it is. So disabling guest mode, I would say for 99% of all schools is a first step on a managed Chromebook. Sign-in restriction, I can then choose, am I going to be even more restricted on my device? So am I going to allow any user to sign in? Which maybe if it's personal Chromebooks, if they've got a one-to-one program and parents have paid for the Chromebooks, maybe I want to allow people to sign in. Or I could restrict my users to being just the students from my school. So I can restrict it down to just the users from my school if I want to. Again, so you could make that change as appropriate. And then below that, I think this is a really useful feature when it comes to using Chromebooks, particularly with primary school students. And it's called autocomplete domain. What that means is when the Chromebook powers up and that login screen first comes up, the back half of my email address will already be there pre-filled in. So my users only have to type in their username. If you're working at a primary school, you're working with young students, year 1, year 2, you've got a massive long domain name. It's going to take them, ages to type that in. So having the pre-filled domain name in is really useful. And so again, my user only has to put their username in, and then the elmschool.org in this case is filled in for them. If you look at my devices here, I'm still allowing any user to sign in. So that means I would allow a user from a different domain to sign into my device, and they simply have to overwrite. So it will put elmschool.org at the end of the name. If they put an @ symbol, it will wipe that out and they can write something else in on the sign-in page. So you can still do autocomplete domain name, even though you're allowing multiple domains to sign in. So that's that piece. Down here, the next bit, sign-in screen. On Chromebooks, you may see they remember sort of who was on them previously, and they show the name and the photo of previous people on there. That's great if you've got one-to-one Chromebooks, but if you've got a trolley of Chromebooks, it can get messy. So I can turn that feature off there so that those are not shown on the sign-in page. Device off hours. Device off hours basically is me setting a time when those restrictions up above won't apply. And some schools, one-to-one programs, devices that may be being paid for by the parents, maybe we want to have times of the day when anyone can sign in and times of the day when we want to control that device. So we can do that here by using the hours. And so what we do here is we can set times when the other policies don't apply. And effectively, the device becomes unlocked and usable by anybody. And again, I'd probably only do that with student-owned devices, but I could do that maybe, starting at 4 p.m. till 9 p.m. or something in the evening, and I could do that. And again, if depending on when you're in the world, you can set your time zone there as well to do that. Okay, so that's device off hours. Device wallpaper. Now, we're in the section here, just to make it clear, we're in the sign-in section here. So by device wallpaper here, what we're talking about is the background when the sign-in page is coming up. And so you can upload your own school-branded wallpaper if you want to. When I worked at a school and we had trolleys of Chromebooks, lots of trolleys here and there, I found it useful to have different coloured wallpaper for each of the trolleys in school. And that way, if you opened a Chromebook, because bear in mind, all Chromebooks pretty much look the same. If you open a Chromebook and it's got a bright blue background, we would know, okay, that's from the science trolley. If I'm standing in the library next to the library trolley, I know somehow that's got mixed up. And I know where it's going to go back to without having to sign in or look at the serial number or do anything else. I can just visibly see that information from sign-in page. So if you play around, and that's why maybe having the organisational units sorted for each of your trolleys, it makes it easy then to have different wallpapers for different Chromebooks. And it just makes that management of devices more easier. If you're doing one-to-one, maybe you just want to have a standard school, nice wallpaper you're going to use for sign-in page. Erase user data. So again, it comes down to your setup in school. Trolleys, maybe each time you want the Chromebooks restarting, you want to erase all the users off. That might make sense. One-to-one, where students got their own Chromebooks, probably not erase. But again, you can toggle that on that page. And below that, and as I said, I'm not going to go through every setting on this page. I'm going to pick up on the ones. There's a few around the camera. Just to make you aware, there are some third-party tools out there from people like Wand that can do QR code sign into Chromebooks. So if you're working with younger students who may be going to struggle typing in their username and password, there are other alternatives available. And that's why there is camera control options and other things on this page, because some schools who are going to use QR codes on it may well need cameras enabled. Things like the language, things like the keyboard, the language is going to be there on the sign in page again, because all of these settings are just about the sign in page, and so on all the way down through there. And what we also have on this page are the accessibility tools that are going to be available on the sign in page. So if you're working with a student who needs some of these tools, even though they haven't yet signed into the Chromebook, if we know which Chromebook they've got, and we put that Chromebook over here into maybe a special little OU, a sub-organizational unit, and maybe they need high contrast mode turned on, we can actually force that on from the moment their device signs up, powers up. So what I would often think about is if we've got one-to-one devices, students with special needs that need some of these features or additional needs that need these features, we can set the device to have it from the moment they power up. So we're not having a student who's got lots of tools but has to get through the sign-in page to get to them. So, so that's the allowing users to decide there in terms of the accessibility tools on that page. And then down there, you've got some other options. And I'm not, again, going to spend lots of time today going through everything because there is hundreds of options. But you've got the ability to decide when your device is update on this page and some update issues and some variations around there. And then there's something called kiosk mode we'll talk about a bit later. That's also on this page, and kiosk availability. So these are some of the device settings that you might set on your device when you're setting your device up for use in school. So a couple of little questions coming in, or a little point coming in. I see Kim's in as one of our very experienced Chromebook managers and users. If you do, if you use Android apps on Chromebooks, you don't want to use auto erase. That's a really good point there from Kim. As what happens if you do that is it will wipe all the Android apps off, and then when the device restarts, it's going to reinstall all the Android apps again, making it all slow. So don't use the auto eraser device if you're using lots of Android apps. And we'll dig into Android apps versus web apps as we get through the webinar in a little bit. But really good point, Kim. Thanks for raising that one and pointing that out. So far we've talked about device settings. But you'll see at the top of the page here, I've also got the option to talk about user and browser settings. So device settings are what's going to come in place from the moment the device powers up. But once my user puts their password in, then we're going to move over and look at the user and browser settings. That's fine. I'm happy to leave because I'm not making changes. So my user and browser settings are going to kick in once the password's put in. And this is going to work on any device, managed devices, and just Chromebooks that someone's picked up from PC World and signed into, because these are now based on the user signing in. So here we go on the user device. And again, there are literally hundreds, if not many hundreds on this page of settings. So I'm going to focus on certain ones. As we go down this page, you'll see these little icons appear for different things. And what these icons are telling me is, what does this setting affect when I'm using it? So when I see the little computer, the little Chromebook, that means that it's going to affect Chrome devices. But some of the settings on this page will affect the Chrome browser as well. So it would affect them if they're on a Windows or Mac or Linux Chrome browser. And some of the settings on this page will also affect Android devices, because these are user settings that I'm changing for the user wherever they sign in. So keep your eye on those little symbols as you're making changes. Bear that in mind. So let's scroll down a little bit and talk about, again, some of the key settings. I'm going to go down quite a way here for the device. The first one here is I've got some options around security of the device. So whether we're using a lock screen or not, whether we allow quick unlock, which is available on some devices, just some little settings there, whether we allow incognito mode, and again, probably turned off in the case of most calls. So just some settings around that can be controlled on this page here. I'm going to scroll all the way past all of these settings to get to my home page settings. I'll come back to network in a minute because I want to get to home page settings, which will move further and further down the page. Android apps. Startup. Okay, I don't know why this isn't at the top, because in my mind, I like to logically think, well, what happens when the device starts up? So these are the settings now for our students coming on. So what does the home button do? And again, we could allow the user to decide, or we could make it never show it or always show it. And then what is my home page? So what is the page that comes up when students first click on the internet? And in this case, I can set one up as I've got Google Classroom set here as the home page on these devices, which is useful if you ever use the Google Classroom, but some people have a site they use that the teacher controls. We could do it on a site basis. And you'll see further down the page here, we've also got the option to load pages on startup as well, which means when the device starts up, do we want to load some additional pages in? So that's our home page every time we open a new tab or our home page. But down here, our startup page, I mean, when a device powers up, we could preload some web pages in. So things to use on the startup area. Some schools bring the acceptable use policy up at that point. So it's front and center for students again to see. Some schools, because bear in mind we can do this on the left-hand side by organizational unit, might change the pages when they want to look at certain things. So they might change the pages to be the Year 11 revision pages. They might change the pages to be for the Year 11 students. Maybe for Year 7, we've got some induction website or page that might be useful to them. So again, we can start to sort of be more controlling as to what our students see when they come onto the device. So pages to load on startup, really useful. Other things about the startup, again, we might want to play around with, just the browser check. And what was the other one I wanted on this page? And the new tab as well, what comes on for those. So thinking about, well, what's the ideal setup for the students of different year groups coming through? Further down, we can start to control the content that they see on the page. And I know Kim is pointing out that I could just use the search on the right-hand side. Thanks, Kim. Thinking about finding things. One of the things I often struggle with when you're in the admin console is this huge list of things. But the search is pretty good, actually. The search at the top of admin console is great for just taking you straight to the feature you want if you want to make a change. Anyway, coming back over. So content, we can control what loads up. And again, this is going to affect all our devices. So putting on safe search for Google searches, and also what mode we're going to restrict YouTube into. So again, maybe using the different modes to control what videos come up might be something we want to do on all our devices, not just Chromebooks, across our whole Google experience. Whether we want to allow screenshotting to take place on our devices, and Chromebooks now have built-in screenshot, which they've always had, the ability to take screenshots, but also now the ability to do screen recordings, and that's relatively new to Chromebooks. But the ability to take a video of their screen as well natively has come. So the ability to turn that on and off is on this page. And again, some of the other security settings here about cookies and what you might want to block in that space. Images in JavaScript. So whether you're going to allow Flash or block Flash, and a lot of places moving away from Flash now to block it or allow it. So that plays in there. And what's going to happen to a PDF file. So again, you can start PDFs still quite common. So allowing the Chrome browser to open PDFs is probably what you want this on. So pop-ups, we can allow pop-ups, block pop-ups, or allow our user to decide. So again, that might be one done by organizational unit. Maybe we want to turn those off for our younger students. If you're working with a primary school, year 1, year 2, year 3, you might want to think about turning off pop-ups so we don't get distracted by other things when they are going there. Okay, so that's just a quick run through of some of the user settings. And as I said, there are huge numbers on this page of different things we could be setting. And I'm not going to dig into all of them today because it would take us way more than this webinar to go through. As we're going, don't forget if you've got questions on particular settings, and I'm just scrolling down here, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm going to jump across the chat document. No new questions in my chat doc yet. As we go through today, if you have questions, bit.ly/ChromeQA to add questions if you want to ask in the doc. Thank you for dropping the link in, Rachel. So we've talked about setting some device settings. We've talked about some user settings on our device. So that means we're starting to tailor that device for use in our school. Now let's move on to talk about apps and extensions and putting some things on that device for our users to use. Before I do that, I want to talk about, well, how do we make that choice? How do we decide what we want to put on our devices? As you can see, I'm using a Chromebook here at the moment. And at the bottom here, I've got some tools that I have pinned to my bottom bar. So within a Chromebook, if we're using Chromebooks, we can put things down here, and I've got Gmail down there, I've got YouTube down there, I've got my messages, got the Play Store down there, got my files down there. I can also, of course, press the button on the bottom left, bring the menu up, and I can get into a much bigger list of features and things that I might want to use on my device. Some of these might be Android apps, some of these might be web-based apps, because the Chromebook, of course, can use a variety of different things. And that's why on this page, and this device is unlocked and open, by the way, so it's not controlled and therefore it's not restricted from me doing this. This device, which is an open device, has access to the Android Play Store to bring Android apps on, access to the Chrome Web Store to bring Chrome extensions on. But normally in a school, we wouldn't give wide open access to those. We want to control what's on our device. So how do we work out what to put on? So the first thing I would say is that in the majority of cases, we would look towards web apps. And then as a secondary choice on a device, we might look towards Android apps. There are some exceptions to that rule, which I'll talk about in a second. But the reason why I go in that order, if there's a web app, go for the web app. If not, go for the Android app. Is obviously our web apps are much lighter for our device to use. We're effectively, when we go to any of these web apps on here, we are effectively just taking people to a link. So when I click this Google Docs button here, it's just opening my browser and taking me to docs.google.com. It's just doing that. So although it appears like I've got an app there, it's just opening another website. So it's light and easy for my device to use. I wouldn't necessarily download the Android Google Docs app unless there was some functionality in the Google Docs app, the Android app, that I didn't have on the web version, which usually there isn't. So first thing to think about is, well, can I go with the web app? Do I need an Android app? When it comes to thinking about these apps, Google have built a useful resource that can help us, and it's called the Chromebook App Hub. Because if you think about it, we've got all these different web stores out there. There's Chrome extensions that live in the Chrome Web Store. There's all those things in the Android Store, and there's going to be thousands, if not millions, of apps there. And none of us are going to spend our time going through millions of apps to see what might be useful. So Google built a place where we could come to look for educational apps for use on Chromebooks, and it's called the Chromebook App Hub. And it's a really useful place if you're thinking, what sort of things could I be putting on my Chromebooks? So what we see on this page is information about the different tools that are out there, as it says apps that educators love. And when we click on them, it gives us more information. And that's why it's really useful for you, because I imagine most people watching this webinar have got some sort of decision-making role. And sometimes you might get asked to make a decision about, well, should we be allowing this or not? Should we be allowing, in this case, I clicked on Wakelet. Should we be allowing Wakelet to go onto our devices for people to use Wakelet? So on this page, what it does is it gives me an overview of what it does, what it is, so I can have a read if I don't understand what it is yet. Some resources there to help me with that, with the tool. But further down the page, we've got things like the data policy. So on this page, I can then come down here and I can have a look and say, okay, so I can see the badges they've earned in terms of privacy. I can see some of their statements, and I can link off, in this case, to Wakelet's privacy policy. Because if I'm making a decision to push an app out to my users, I need to think through, well, what's the GDPR, what's the data policy on that app? Is this something I'm allowed to do? Are they allowed to use it? And you might be in that decision-making position. So I think the Chromebook App is a great starting place for checking out and seeing what the position is with the apps. So a great place to come, look through, go there. If something's not in the App Hub, then that probably means it's not as popular in the education space. It might just be new, but it's where the bulk of the tools that we see used in schools sit in the App Hub. So imagine we've now got the point where we've looked at something, we think, well, this could be a good thing to use on devices. We want to push it out. How do we do that? So back into our admin console, back over to the Chrome management menu, and down to apps and extensions. So here I am in my apps and extensions area. And as you can see on the left-hand side, as before, I've got my organizational units. So I'm in a position where I can change these settings and change what apps and extensions are going out by my user groups. So I might have something that's really great for sixth form, something that's really great for year 7. I don't have to have it pushed to every device. If I've got my organizational unit set up nicely, I can start to then filter. So let's have a quick look and let's have a go at that. I'm going to go down on my left-hand side here. I'm going to go into my users in my example school. I'm going to go down to my students this time. I don't know, let's go for sixth form. I'm going to give my sixth form access to something. So I've gone and selected just one organizational unit on the left-hand side there. Then on here on the right-hand side, I can press the plus button. But before I do, if you notice here, I've got this set up for my sixth form here. Allow users to install other apps and extensions. And it's set to block all other apps and extensions. So I'm blocking my sixth form from installing anything here other than the ones I'm pushing down below. Okay, so we probably don't want to leave the stores wide open. We probably want to control what's going on device, particularly if they're school-owned devices. And so blocking apps, I'm blocking everything else that's not on my little list down here. So if you like, I'm creating a reduced experience where I'm controlling what apps, what extensions are going out on my devices. And that's the most common setup in terms of schools. So got that set. If I then press the plus button, bottom right, because I want to add something new, I'm going to give something new to my students. It gives me this little menu of choices here of the different apps I can add, and it's the different options. So the Chrome Web Store, which is where my Chrome extensions live. I've got the add from Google Play, so things from the Play Store. My Android apps are in there. I've got Chrome extension by ID. It's rare that you're going to use that, but there are some security apps that you might be installing to monitor usage that are almost hidden within the Chrome Web Store, and therefore you have to put the ID code in. So you might occasionally have to go to that one. And the top one there is just adding URLs, because I can take any website I like and I can push it on my device and make a button for it, just like it was an app or a web app. So I can also almost, if you like, I want to say build my own, but I can put links to certain common sites. So let's imagine your students all use Timetable Rockstars a lot, and you want to pin Timetable Rockstars to the bottom taskbar on your Chromebooks. You can just come in here, put the URL in, and pin that over. So those are my choices on that page. So let's go on. Let's go for something from the Chrome Web Store. So when I click on this, it loads up the Chrome Web Store effectively. It starts showing me different things that are available. I'm going to go for Moat today, I think. Might have already added Moat, can't remember. No, I haven't. That's good. Moat's a Chrome extension that allows you to leave audio feedback on Google Docs. Quite growing popularity. So, going to hit the Moat button. Now, obviously, I'd want to do some checking out, but we're going to presume I've checked this out. It's all good. I've checked out it's what I want it to be, and maybe in terms of the data security piece. As a general rule, as a bit of advice here from me, when teachers ask me to install things, I often look at also these two figures here. So 88 ratings, 5 stars. It's got more than 1 million users. Okay, so that would suggest it's quite a popular app. It's fairly highly rated. If somebody asked me to install something, I come on here and it's got no ratings, 3 users, I'd be more suspicious about either we're a very early adopter or this isn't the right thing to be installing. So press the select button. And then look at Moat. And so Moat is now here in my sixth form. It's now a allow install. That's what it's on at the moment. So you can just allow to be installed. And that means my sixth form, if they want to use Moat on their device, can choose to install it, but it's not going to be force installed. To do the force install, I have to click on that, and I've got some choices. So block means no one would be allowed to use it and block it off the devices. Allow install, which is the default. Force install means that when I press that, now for my sixth form, it will install Moat on their devices. And then force install and pin to browser toolbar. It's going to not necessarily work with this one because it's a Chrome extension. With web links, I think it's going to put it on that bottom bar on my Chromebook so we can all see it. So those are my choices once I've picked the right app with what I want to do in terms of them going out. Now, a word of warning on this one around Android apps, which is the next one up in the Play Store. If I take an Android app and I push it out to my users, it doesn't go instantly. So Google, because if you think about it, imagine I took a great big Android app that was big in size in terms of memory. Imagine I pushed it out to 1,800 Chromebooks. I'll probably kill my school network if it just flew out at once. So it staggers them out with the Android apps in particular. So bear that in mind. If a teacher comes to you and says, can you put this Android app on? I need to use it in 5 minutes time with my class. It's not going to land on those Chromebooks in 5 minutes. So it staggers them out, and it can depend on the number of users you've got and the number of devices and your Wi-Fi and all sorts of the theories. But I'd say, like, you know, in a big school to a day to get things out there. So now, of course, as soon as you allow an Android app, a user can go in and almost select to download it and try and get it that way. But it's not the easiest route. So bear that in mind, that Android app's slightly delayed. Again, I can pick my Android apps at this page. And again, it's the same option. I go through and choose whether I install it or not. In terms of Android app or web, Android apps to go for, a couple that sometimes catch people out. The first one is Jamboard, Google Jamboard. Obviously, it's available on the web. I can just go to it at Jam. I can just type jam.new into my top address bar, and it will then create me a blank Jamboard. And I'm just on the web version here, and that's Jamboard for web over here. And I've got some things on my side menu here. So I go to pen. I've got some colored pens and some nice things over there. Jamboard is one of the unusual use case scenarios where the Android app, which I'm going to try and find now, where the Android app, which is this one, has got more functionality than the web-based version. And so it's one of those apps where you would want to potentially push the Android app if you're going to use Jamboard heavily in your school. So if I go into my I think this is a black one. Go into my Jamboard now. Now I'm on Android app version of Jamboard. There's wait for it all to load in. And you can see now when I bring my pens up, I've got more choices. I've got the assisted drawing tools, which I didn't see on the web version. So now I can go in with my assisted drawing tools. I'm going to get Magic Auto Draw up. And this is going to guess what I'm drawing when I draw. I'm going to try and draw a cat with some eyes and a mouth. And what it's doing down the bottom here is it's guessing what I'm drawing using artificial intelligence. And then it's saying, well, you're trying to draw my cat was so bad that one of the things I was drawing a tiger. But it's trying to guess that. Now, those sort of features, that feature doesn't exist on Jamboard for web, but exists on Android. So Jamboard is the first use case where you might push an Android app over the web-based version. That's the first one you might talk about. And then the other one where you might do that, I'm trying to think if I've got this on my device. I'm not sure if I have got it pushed, is Google Classroom. So on the web, on the Android app, Google Classroom can annotate on top of students' work. So if you're working with teachers and they want to handwrite using a stylus over the top of students' work, the Google Classroom Android app can do that, but the web-based version doesn't. So what I would then do is come in here and probably be very selective so I don't confuse my students. Only for teachers, probably only allow install the Classroom Android app. And that means the teachers who want to go down that route, maybe they've got a Chromebook with a stylus, they could annotate on top of work using the Classroom Android app. So those are two almost exceptions to the rule of mostly pushing web-based apps. It would be great to find out in the chat, and I'll give you a minute or two to do this, whether there are some Android apps or Chrome extensions that you really love, that you would push out, that you think are really useful for students to use. If so, put that in the chat. I'm seeing some comments in already. While I'm waiting for those to come in, I think we answered Tim's question, possibly audio. I think he probably asked that just before I did it. How come there's a forced install of a URL? At some point, I've obviously, in my domain here, I've done a demo of forced installing, I think it was the BBC website, wasn't it? So you can just push a URL. So I think we answered that. And you did put okay, so that's the answer to that one. Down here, someone there's, didn't know the Jamboard Android app is a good one. Music theory guy, sorry. And I'll also just check the Q&A doc, but we haven't had any questions coming there. No questions on the Q&A doc yet today, so that's good. So there are just this range of apps that we can start to build up and make our Chromebooks more powerful, more user-friendly for our users. I haven't had any app suggestions in yet. Any Chromebook app suggestions? Pop them in chat. While you're thinking of some more, just check my chat's still loading. While you're thinking of some more, think about any that you've been asked to push the students. I'll mention another one that's popular in the school space, and that is Equatio. You can open up a blank Google Doc by going docs.new in the top menu bar. Equatio is an app that Chrome extension that helps you put maths content into Google across the Google tools, across Jamboard, Docs, Sheets, Slides, across the range. Often when I'm working with maths teachers, they're like, well, that's great, but how do I get my equations in? And so it runs as a Chrome extension. I'll put it in. And you'll see in a minute when it loads in, it comes in as a bar at the bottom of the page. And I have a few choices with Equatio. I can handwrite my math symbols in. I'm not on a touchscreen here, so I'm going to have to use my mouse, but the sum of sigma over, this is my very bad drawings, it'll be interesting to see if it gets this right, over pi. And it's again, what it's doing over on the right-hand side is it's bringing my maths content in there. And I can then just press insert math and bring that in. And then the other option with Equatio is to bring spoken maths in. 47 over the square root of 12. And then what it does over here is it brings in my my maths that way to do that there. And it's got, I'm not going to spend much time talking about Equatio, but it's got a whole host of other features of different things you can bring in here, like the periodic table and all sorts of other things as well. So Equatio, popular Chrome extension, particularly when you're working with science teachers, maths teachers, those sort of things. We've had a list coming in now of other things coming in. Music Theory Guy says web paint, used by colleagues to annotate web pages, very useful when demonstrating on a whiteboard touchscreen. And Music Theory Guy I know is called Stephen. Thank you for telling me your name. I don't have to keep calling you that now, which is great. Kim has popped in. Hypathia, which is very similar one for getting maths content in. So similar to Equatio in that sense. Somebody mentioned one of my all-time favorites here. Stephen mentioned Google Keep. And again, it's a really, Google Keep is a great little product for note-taking as it is, but the Chrome extension gives you the little ability to crop and save things into Keep really quickly. So a popular Chrome extension. So a few for your list there if you're interested in Chrome extensions. So moving through here, we've talked about adding Chrome extensions. So in terms of some useful resources, then we've talked about adding devices, managing devices, adding Chrome extensions. Some useful resources you might find helpful as we move towards the end of the session here today. This is one of a series of events that we're running at bit.ly/GFE UK events. And we're running a series of different events. Some focus on the admin console. Some focus on particular uses of the admin console. And so just to explain that, we've got some sessions focused, for example, on Office 365 on Chromebooks. So if you're in a school that's using a mixed environment, that might be a session for you. As well as the ability to sign up and watch an event live, like you guys are all doing now. We also record all of these webinars and they're available to watch back on the website. So if you miss one or you want to just watch one in your own time, or you want to come back to this one today, it's available to watch on the website at bit.ly/GFE UK events. So that's the first resource you might use. Secondly, I think this is a really, really great resource. And if you're watching this, you're probably more technical because you've come onto a webinar about that. But Chromebooks and the Google ecosystem as a whole is permanently evolving and permanently changing. And the features that we see are permanently growing and improving all the time. And it's really hard to stay on top of it. And so a really useful blog is the Google Workspace blog, which is the Workspace Updates blog, which lives here. And it tells you what's changing. as it comes out, as new things change, as new updates come out, it gets put on the Workspace Updates blog. And when you come onto this blog page, one of the options here on the right-hand side is to subscribe by email. So I've subscribed by email, and when something new comes on the blog, it sends me an email, and I can then have a look at it and say, well, is this for me? Is this a change I need to know about? So, for example, the option to replace your background in Google Meet is now available on Android. I can have a look at that. I could scroll down here. Now, whenever a new feature comes out with Google, I would always check who's this available for, because there's lots of different account types out there. This one says available to all Workspace customers, as well as G Suite Basic and Business. So that's everybody. So that's fine. That's going to come to affect us. But sometimes it's only business customers, and that wouldn't be us. So that's there. And then in terms of the release, when's it coming? Features drop over a period of time, rapid release and schedule release, and you can choose in the admin console whether you're rapid release, get things quickly, schedule release, get things a little bit slow. It's not massive, but a little bit slower. So this one says gradual rollout up to 15 days starting on the 7th of June. So they're going to start this going out on the 7th of June, which is in the past. And if you're the last person to get it, it'll be 15 days after that date. So within that window, that's when you're going to get your updates. So I find that blog really useful in terms of keeping up to date with the changes that are going on. And that affects Chromebooks as well, because we've seen new features come as new things come to Chromebooks. When screen recording came out as a recent feature, and the little, as a name for it, the little tray with all the files in, I'll come back to what that's called, as the Chromebooks continue to update. There's also a range of websites out there to help you. The Teach From Anywhere site, teachfromanywhere.google, and the Teach Centre at g.co/Teach Centre, where there's a lot more detail focused really on teachers and their growth within the area. So don't forget to check out those places as well. And that nicely brings me to the end of today's webinar. Now, I'm going to sit around for a little bit to answer any questions people have. I'll just go and do one final check on the Q&A doc. No more questions in the Q&A doc, so it looks like we're all clear there. But feel free to ask any questions in that Q&A doc, and I will come back after today's webinar and check that Q&A doc and add new features in. All it leaves for me, therefore, to say is a big thank you for joining me today. Don't forget there's a feedback form. Links in the chat there. It'd be great if we could get some feedback on today's session. And I'll see you all again soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.